If you're Virgo Sun, you've probably been called critical, perfectionist, nitpicky, anxious, cold, obsessive, so many times that people probably treat your entire personality like this one long performance of joyless control. They probably act like your attention to detail is neurosis, your standards are judgment, and your desire for things to work properly is some kind of pathological inability to relax. But here's what they're missing: your sun sign isn't a personality disorder. It's your developmental blueprint shaped by the seasonal conditions you were born into. Virgo season falls into late summer, which is roughly August 23rd through September 22nd, depending on the year, right before the autumn equinox, when everything that grew all summer now has to be sorted, assessed, and prepared for what's coming. The harvest is here. Not everything that grew is usable. Some of it's ripe, some of it's ruined, and someone has to figure out which is which. So this isn't about being critical or anxious. It's about being born into the season that teaches discernment, practical intelligence, preparation through analysis, and the specific kind of wisdom that comes from knowing the difference between what works and what doesn't. So what people call Virgo traits could actually be late summer survival strategies. Let's set the record straight. If your sun is in Virgo, here are 10 things people get wrong about you. Number one, people think you're critical when you're actually assessing quality and functionality. The critical accusation, I think, is the most common one for you guys, and it completely misses what you're actually doing. You're not criticizing, you're assessing. You see, late summer is harvest time, which means evaluation time. You'll have to look at what grew and you have to determine, is this ripe? Is this usable? Is this good enough to store for winter? Will this last or will it rot? That's not criticism, that's quality control. You were born into the season that teaches discernment, which means you're constantly evaluating whether things are functioning the way they're supposed to. So when you point out a flaw, you're not necessarily attacking, you're noticing a gap between how something is and how it could be, which is practical intelligence, not necessarily judgment. The problem is people hear feedback as rejection. So they think that if you point out what's not working, you're saying the whole thing is worthless, but you're not. You're actually trying to improve systems, refine processes, and make things actually work. So what people call critical is actually you doing the evaluative work that the late summer requires. You're not tearing things down. You're making sure they can hold up. Number two, people think you're a perfectionist when you're actually pursuing functional excellence. See, perfectionism, it implies that you're chasing some impossible idea that'll never be satisfied, but that's not what you're doing. You're pursuing functional excellence, which means you want things to work as well as they possibly can within real constraints. Late summer isn't about perfect fruit, it's about fruit that's good enough to eat, store, and survive on. So you have high standards because low standards, they'll end up leading to waste, inefficiency, and systems that break down. So you're not necessarily being unreasonable. You're probably more so being realistic about what it takes for something to actually function over time. And when you revise something 5 times, you're not being obsessive. You're iterating toward the version that will actually hold up under use. And you see, the perfectionist label, it usually comes from people who are satisfied with good enough in the sense of like barely functional, right? And you can't do that. You know that small flaws compound into big failures. And what people call perfectionism is actually you understanding that details matter and that things can either work or they don't. There's no middle ground between functional and broken, really. Number three, people think you're anxious when you're actually anticipating problems before they even happen, and AKMI is doing Lord's work, okay? Everyone assumes that Virgos are just nervous wrecks and anxious wrecks, but what they're actually calling anxiety could actually be strategic anticipation. Late summer is preparation season, winter's coming, and you can't afford to miss warning signs. So you got to think ahead and plan for contingencies and identify potential problems while there's still time to solve them. So your mind is consistently running scenarios because that's how you prevent disasters. You're doing risk assessment. So when you say, what if this goes wrong? That's not necessarily you spiraling. That's you planning, identifying the weak points in a system so that you can reinforce them before they fail. And the people who call you anxious are usually people who don't plan ahead, I'll raise my hand, and then act surprised when predictable problems occur. Also raise my hand. You can't operate that way. Late summer, it survives by preparing for what's coming. So what they call anxiety is actually you doing the mental work that keeps things from falling apart, aka I call it the Lord's work. You're not worried for no reason. You're worried for very specific, practical reasons that other people aren't paying attention to. Number 4, people think you're cold when you're actually helping through practical action, not emotional performance. The cold accusation I think is interesting because I think it assumes that care has to look emotional to be real. But you don't show care through emotional performance, you show care through practical action. Late summer, it doesn't comfort the plants with feelings. It harvests them, it sorts them, and it prepares them for survival, which is love expressed through utility. When someone you care about has an issue, you don't just sympathize. You'll analyze the problem, you'll identify solutions, and you'll help them implement fixes. And that's not coldness, that's actually practical support. Again, doing the Lord's work. You show up by making things work, not by performing empathy. The people who call you cold usually want emotional validation more than they want solutions. They want you to mirror their feelings back to them, and that's not something you can necessarily do because your care is action based. So you show love by fixing the thing that's broken, by organizing the thing that's chaotic, and by solving the problem that's causing distress. So what they call cold could actually be you offering the most practical form of care there is. Number 5, people think you're judgmental when you're actually maintaining standards that makes things work. You see, judgmental implies that you're imposing arbitrary preferences on other people, but your standards aren't necessarily arbitrary. They're based on what works versus what doesn't. In late summer, it can't afford to be like, wish like you can't if you store bad fruit with the good fruit, I'm trying to say, it all rots. So you have to end up sorting that quality from the dysfunction, and that requires judgment. So you have strong opinions about how things should be done because you've absorbed observed what works and what fails. So when you say something isn't good enough, it's not necessarily you being elitist. Maybe you're just preventing waste and dysfunction because your standards protect resources, time, and energy from being squandered on approaches that won't hold up. So the people who call you judgmental are normally people who want everything to be acceptable regardless of the quality. They think that having standards may be a little bit mean, but you know that false acceptance leads to some real problems. So what they call judgmental could actually be you maintaining the discernment. Here goes that word again. Discernment is the word for Virgo that keeps systems functional. Number 6. When I write these things out, I don't really think about reading them out. That's that, but I feel still like odd. Number 6. People think you're obsessive when you're actually thorough in ways that prevent future problems. Obsessive suggests that you can't let go of things that don't matter. But the things you focus on, I think for you guys, they do matter. They matter in ways that other people don't see until it's too late. Because you see, late summer is detail oriented because details determine whether the harvest succeeds or fails. So one overlooked detail could mean the whole store spoiling, basically. What they say, one bad apple spoils, like that could happen. So you have to pay attention to small things because small things become big things. You'll notice that crack in the foundation, that error in the data, that flaw in the logic. Other people will think you're obsessing over nothing, but maybe you're preventing that nothing from becoming something catastrophic. Your thoroughness isn't compulsion, it's prevention. And when you check something multiple times, you're not being paranoid, you're ensuring accuracy. When you organize something meticulously, you're not being controlling, you're creating systems that will function reliably over time. And what people call obsessive is actually you doing the detailed work that makes everything possible. And again, I'll say it again, the Lord's work typically is what you're doing. Number 7, people think you're uptight when you're actually protecting systems from chaos. My phone's down, whatever. Uptight, I think, is what people call anyone who won't participate in some dysfunction or some disorder. But I wouldn't necessarily say you're uptight. I would say more so you're maintaining boundaries around functionality because late summer is a type of season that can't be casual about storage. If you're careless with how you preserve the harvest, you starve in winter and you die. So structure isn't being like rigid, it's more survival. So you have to keep things organized, clear, functional, because that's what allows you to operate effectively. So when you resist chaos, you're not being rigid, you're protecting the system that allows complex things to work. Other people, they can tolerate mess because they're not the ones maintaining the order. If you are the one. So the uptight accusation, I think it usually comes from people who create disorder and then expect others to manage it, and they want you to relax your standards so they don't kind of have to meet them, which is not something you're typically prone to do because your developmental assignment is to maintain the structure that keeps things from falling apart. So what they call uptight is more likely you doing essential organizational work. Number 8, people think you're self-denying when you're actually disciplined in service of long-term functioning. You see, people assume that Virgos are self-denying martyrs, I think, who never allow themselves pleasure. That's not really what's happening. You're not denying yourself. You're probably just being disciplined because late summer is that time of the year where you're going to have some delayed gratification because you're going to be harvesting now so that y'all can eat up later. So you have to work now so you can rest later, which is not like martyrdom, it's more strategic timing. So you'll prioritize function over immediate gratification. And this is very interesting because honestly, like literally, like if I could say there's something that's like one of my mom's like foundational, and my mom's a Virgo everything, Virgo Sun, Moon, and Rising. Um, like one of my earliest like memories, like really like of like I guess a life lesson is knowing that like nothing comes to you for free or easy, like which is such a Virgo mindset and such a, like, functionality of what I'm talking about, because it's like, what if you want something that's gonna come real quick, it's gonna not be good, and it's probably not gonna be like, you I don't know, like, she's always kinda, like, raised me, like, the mindset, like, just, like, discernment, to, like, think, to put on your thinking cap. "Baby girl, you better think, because if you're getting this for free, like, what is the reasoning? Are you check like, you have to check those details." Um, and that is something that's huge, or I think just prolonging that function over having this immediate gratification. And I think it's because you understand that systems require maintenance. Like you can't just indulge every impulse and expect things to just keep working. Someone has to do the unglamorous work of keeping things running, and that someone is typically you. And when people call self-denial, it's actually you understanding that discipline creates freedom. You maintain your health, your systems, your commitments, because that gives you a stable foundation. So you're not suffering. So you're building capacity. And the pleasure you delay is pleasure you can actually sustain. Number 9, people think you're humble to a fault when you're actually just not performing confidence you don't feel. You see, everyone talks about Virgo's humility like it's some kind of pathological self erasure, but you're not being falsely humble. You're just honest about where your limitations are. Late summer knows what's ready and what's not, and you're the same way. You know what you're good at and what you're still learning. And that's not low self esteem, that's accurate self assessment. I just said it, but I'm going to say it again. Again, it actually makes me think of my mom as well. Like, I'm always, like, telling her, or I used to tell her a lot, I don't tell her anymore, but, like, "You should be a principal," or "You because I see, like, the way she's so good at details, and, like, I just, like, know my mom would, like, not let, like, a child slip or, like, a detail slip, but it probably also would drive her insane to do that type of a job and be in charge of, like, that many people, and she also doesn't like the, the politics that can come into those type of things sometimes because my mom's not playing any games with none of y'all. Um, but it's just I don't know, like, I feel like she's the one who, like, knows, like, what she wants to do and, like, the background, just to again, I guess, discernment and having accurate self-assessment. But you don't perform confidence you don't have because performance wastes energy. So you're not about to like be a peacock and like fake or whatever. If you know something, you say so. If you made a mistake, you'll acknowledge it. And that's not weakness, that's integrity. You'd rather be accurate than impressive. And the people who call you too humble are usually people who confuse confidence with performance and maybe a little bit of Leo. They think that you should act certain even when you're not. And you can't do that because your intelligence is built on honest evaluation, including evaluation of yourself. So what they call excessive humility is actually you maintaining the same standards of accuracy for yourself that you maintain for everything else. Number 10, people think you're control freaks when you're actually creating order so things can actually function. The control freak accusation assumes that you're trying to dominate people, but you're not trying to control people. You're trying to organize systems. Honestly, I would say most of you guys don't have it to do. You don't got it to do to be trying to control people. So I don't even think that's really the root of it. I really think it's more so about organizing systems because late summer is about taking what's chaotic and making it usable. That requires structure, sequence, order. Like everything that Leo was just doing, again, popping, being visible, everything, like growing the fruit. It's like, all right, we're coming from abundance being the baseline, and we're going to be transitioning into now more seasons where we have to weigh and we have to evaluate with what we have been given, with what we have grown, with what has started in Aries, what has been stabilized with Taurus, what has been diversified with Gemini, and what has been nurtured and kept in the containers with Cancer, and then what has been grown to that abundance and to that fullness with Leo. Now we're up here in Virgo, and we have to evaluate. We got to think, and we got to make sure that we're leaving Libra season with enough resources to then get it through Scorpio, then get it through Sagittarius. Because then when we get to that Aquarius and Capricorn and Pisces, it's going to get rough, and it's going to be winter, and things are going to die. And so it just makes it such a pivotal and an important time to make sure that the system is really functional and that we're organizing for functionality. So when you step in to organize something, it's because you see that chaos, creating waste and inefficiency from, like I said, everything that Leo we built up to that point. And so when you create systems and processes, it's because systems and processes are what allows complex things to work reliably. So you're not being domineering, you're being practical. And the people who call you a control freak are usually people who resist structure because they don't want to be accountable to systems. They ain't got time to do. They ain't got it to do. They want you to have time to do it. So they want everything to be loose and flexible, which means nothing has to work properly. And you can't tolerate that because your job is to make things work. So what they call controlling is actually you creating conditions where things can function at all. So the bottom line is if you're a Virgo sun, you're not critical, anxious, or cold. You're a late summer specialist. You're built for discernment, for practical intelligence, for systematic organization, and the kind of wisdom that comes from knowing the difference between what works and what doesn't. And what people call your negative traits are actually sophisticated strategies for the season you were born into. Because you're not here to lower your standards so other people can feel comfortable. You're here to maintain the level of quality that you queens normally are and functionality that makes things actually work. You're not here to be less thorough. You're here to pay attention to the details everybody else is missing. And you're not here to relax into chaos. You're here to create the order that allows complex systems to function reliably. And the people who get you, they understand that your attention to detail isn't obsession, it's precision, baby girl. Your standards aren't judgment, they're discernment. Your care isn't cold, it's practical. And your discipline isn't self denial, it's long term thinking. The people who don't get you will keep asking you to care less, notice less, and do less. And let them. You've got more important work to do, like making sure everything that needs to function actually does. And like I said before, I'm going to say it again, doing Lord's work.